Geocon was a very early adopter. I mean, Salesforce was literally building the AgentForce platform while they deployed their first agent, a service bot, and they're just about to launch another agent in marketing. Here's Andy Magee, CIO at Geocon.
You were launching your largest ever block of units in Canberra. I believe it was around 900 units, and this was an agent, you have to remind me, I think it was about handling defects and inquiries from the tenants, owners, tenants.
Tenants and so tenants, property managers and strata managers. And you're right, I think when we last spoke, we weren't aware of the outcome, so it was a bit of a trial by fire, given it was the largest unit plan registration in the ACT history. The good news is...
in ACT history?
Yes, correct. So it was 840-something apartments in a single stage.
And this is your first ever agent? You're just going to set it live on the biggest...
Yep, it was a trial by fire. The good news is, although we did have some early tweaking, it absolutely did what it was supposed to do. So what the outcome was we were able to effectively take that huge volume of defects that come through in that initial defect, we call it DLP period, defect liability period. So the first 90 days, massive spike. We were able to take that inquiry and funnel it through what used to be a human-centric system. So we would have people sitting there, the service tickets would come in, they would understand which unit they were in, they would fill in the missing pieces to a ticket because we never had complete data adherence when someone would fill that information in. They would understand what the issue was, they would then get it to the relevant subcontractor, bring in the agent.
And what kind of issues, like leaks?
So, common issues are painting. Painting's the most common. So it would be, I've got a scratch here, I've got a chip here, but it can be anywhere from that to water leak. So what the agent would do is it would work with the person inquiring to understand what that problem was.
This is a chatbot interface?
Chatbot, yep. So it's embedded on our service, Geocon service public website. People would interact with it. Its first actionable item would be, like I said, to understand the problem. Then what it would do is understand which property they were in. And this is some of the information we used to not necessarily have up front. People would be very quick to say what their problem is, maybe wouldn't be able to give context to where they're actually living. So there would be a lot of back and forth. Traditionally, the agent, its job was to qualify all that information as a part of its interaction. Without that, it couldn't lodge the ticket. So it would continue to have an open line of communication with the person inquiring until it was able to collect all of those critical pieces of information, pieces of data that we require to pass that ticket to a subcontractor.
And that was all through the conversation? It wasn't through integrating with any of your services, like looking up the phone numbers of the tenants or anything like that?
No, absolutely not. So, the beauty of AgentForce, we have that context in the CRM. Now, because these are tenants, these are not people who are our customers. These might be investors who have a tenant in their property. And this is where this blind spot was for us. We have to service these people. We have a liability as the builder to be able to fix these defects, but they're not our customer. So we don't have that information on our CRM. We don't know who they are when they talk to us. So what this agent was doing was building that profile and actually creating a tenant record and associating with them with that property. So subsequent conversations they might have with our agent, it would be able to identify them and understand that they were in that property. Any change to that, it would update the record as well.
How did it go? So you unleashed it on 840 units. Yep. How did it compare to handling all those by humans?
Well, huge. Like I said, it wasn't without some adjustment in the early days, but we knew that would be required. It's not, you can't expect to build something like that and have an absolutely frictionless experience. So we got a bit of feedback from the subcontractor end. So we've kind of got three customers here. We've got what Geocon's requirement is. We've got the customer or the tenant or the property manager, and we've also got the subcontractor, and they've all got different needs and different views as to what they want. So we work with them very early on, very, very open line of communication to understand where there were shortcomings, but ultimately what we were able to deliver was a solution that was able to take that huge influx and get it into the subcontractor's hands with completed data through that critical period.
So one of the big announcements since we last spoke, since AgentForce last year, was the introduction of deterministic algorithms to AgentForce. Were you missing out on that functionality? Have you used it? What are your thoughts?
So we didn't architect our original agent with it. We created a table of understanding, so to speak. So, where this is mentioned, we did have some stuff around particular keywords that would invoke a particular action, something like a water leak, would invoke a critical or an urgent job for us. And that's because there's danger, not just from a tenant or an owner's point of view, but also as the builder. A water leak can cause damage to other apartments. So we built that kind of logic in and hard-coded it rather than using some of the deterministic stuff that they can now do. It definitely is an area that I'd like to go back and have a look at and see is there further that we can develop this agent. But as it stands, it was actually able to do a really good job based on the way we architected it.
Okay, so that was your first agent. What have you been thinking about doing in the past 12 months? Have you released any other agents?
We are in the final stages of testing an SDR agent, so sales development rep. So this agent sits between the incoming leads that we're ingesting on the sales side of the business, incoming leads, and we work with a channel sales network. So we don't have an internal sales team. We bring in our organic inquiry from our marketing campaigns, and we send that out to one of many agents or agencies. So the idea of this agent is it will sit there. It will actually interact with the lead prior to a human agent getting that lead, and what its job here is to get that initial outreach quite quickly. So if someone inquires on a Sunday evening at 9 p.m. at night, they're able to get an outreach email, AgentForce touching base with them really, really quickly within sort of 3 to 10 minutes. And that's contextual as well. It knows who they are based on the lead source they came in via. If they inquired about a particular project, it understands which project. So its initial outreach isn't vanilla. It's, hey, I know you're interested in this. Can I provide you some extra context information? Here's the kinds of things I can answer. And where we've been able to take that to is within the context of a conversation that someone might have with this agent, it's now able to do things like recommend restaurants in the direct vicinity, schools, all of the kinds of peripheral questions that someone might have, not necessarily about our product. I wanted to think outside that. So people normally, first thing they jump to is, well, we need to be able to explain the product. It does that. It can explain the amenity of the particular project and key bits of information about living there. But I wanted it to become something that could actually help someone understand if they wanted to live there.
So how does it do that? Because obviously you can feed all sorts of context about the marketing brochures and so on about the building, but you're talking about schools and transport and so on. Where are you pulling that information from?
So we build a profile of the area based on and this is in, like I said, the late stages of testing. But what we're able to do is build using AI as well, but build a profile, an area profile of our project or our product. And that's not concentrating on the product itself. It's concentrating on, and this is templated, but key bits of information that I think someone purchasing or potentially purchasing an apartment would need to know. We worked on what that profile needs to look like. We looked at the kind of inquiry we get through human agents, and then we built in a template so that it's able to answer those critical bits of information. And from there, what it appears like is a really, really smart agent that can actually service all those needs in one conversation.
So talk me through the business case. How did you choose this? What are your expectations in terms of the benefit it's going to bring to you, to the business?
Yeah, so I think what we want it to bring is an ability in what is quite a tough market at the moment. But I mean, this is a solution that can scale. It's the best thing about AI, it can scale. What we typically see in a hot market is when we're working with channel agents, that time to get back, that initial outreach, that can be 3 days. That's quite typical. But what we know of people who purchase property is it's really critical to strike when the iron's hot. If someone inquires about a product, they're probably inquiring through 3 or 4 other developers. And often that speed to engage and that speed to actually give meaningful information and attract that purchaser or potential purchaser is really critical. So those first 3 days can be really, really detrimental to whether you actually get that person through a property or they've gone to your competition. So my idea here was, how do we put something in place that regardless of when we bring the service to the customer, rather than have an agent, a human agent, have to book something in, get that first phone call, leave a message on an answering machine. We're able to do that when it makes sense to the customer.
So essentially, aiming to increase conversions for these kinds of inquiries will lead to greater sales conversion.
That's the key, right? Well, it's twofold. One is we want to actually provide a better customer experience. So the other side of this agent is what we don't want to do is sit AI in the middle, and if we have someone come into this agentic loop and then feel like they're answering questions before they can, it's like a gatekeeper trying to get to an agent. What we wanted to do is have frictionless handoff as well. So we're looking for those escalation prompts where someone clearly needs to actually be moved to an agent. And we offer that at any point where they can actually break that loop and push that inquiry straight to the agent. But while they're engaged, we want it to be able to answer all the kinds of questions that a human sales development rep would, a good one, would be able to answer.
Okay, so taking a step back, it's been 12 months roughly since the last one. What is your expectation of how frequently you can launch these agents? Because, there must be an infinite number of potential use cases, right? And I'm wondering what's the load is it on you and on your team and so on to roll out an agent that is vetted and is going to do what it's supposed to?
Interesting question if you ask me or ask my boss. I think that there's an expectation that we should be always considering where we can place agentic AI, particularly with AgentForce, where there is a spot for it. And I think there's already a lot of other peripheral use cases that we want to look at further. The reality is not all of them will make sense to our business. The investment might be too high and the outcome, the ROI, might not make sense. But I think in a business like ours, we try to run fairly lean. I think that there's definitely some further use cases we want to develop. I think that the idea of a thoroughly thought out agent is sort of a yearly cycle. But the reality is the tools that we have are getting better. So the speed to be able to go from concept to testing should theoretically just be getting faster and faster.
So what are the constraints? Because I'm sure you would like to run lean. I'm sure your CEO would love to add a whole bunch of agents that would reduce headcount and or be able to scale however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, correct. So there's a few things we look at from an ROI sense. There's human effort, replacing human effort. Now, whether that means replacing people with agents or whether that means being able to cross-skill, upskill, move humans into more relevant and helpful areas for the business. I think the constraints for really complex agents, similar to, say, for instance, what we built with the service agent is it's still not something, unless you've got a larger team, that we're probably able to do. It's still something we look to a partner, particularly from an architecture point of view. We're working hand in hand with them. We're doing a lot of the legwork, but there is still a layer that I think that most organisations, there's a hurdle that we can't quite jump over yet. And I know from being here today that they are definitely moving in the right direction. They'll market it as something that is able to, your average punter can jump in and, hey, presto, 20 minutes later you have an agent. The reality is it's not quite that easy. I think the better your data is, the more likely it is that you can actually have an agent that does have that context and you can activate and it can be helpful. The reality is, though, most organisations don't have that data adherence and governance down, and that's the first thing you realise when you start to move into these agentic.
So the hurdles, the barriers are not technology as such, it's more the governance side of it, getting the company match fit.
Yep, spoke about it on stage today, absolutely. And I think everyone jumps to we want the solution bit, and then they realise, well, you start to get, it doesn't quite do what you want it to do. And then you realise it's not because of the technology. The technology is actually really sound. It's typically your data.
But does it get easier? I mean, you've done a service agent. Now you're doing a sales agent. So you're basically getting the data into shape as you go.
Yeah. So there's been definitely. I think that pre-AgentForce, we were very aware of the data governance, and this really came from a marketing sense, the understanding of our customer. Obviously, when AgentForce rolled around, that became more important. We know that good AI needs good data governance and good engine to drive it. So we were lucky that we'd actually spent a few years really trying to bed down what that looked like for our organisation. But I think that a lot of organisations maybe, again, they jump to the let's look at the solutioning and then realise their data's not quite where it is.
You've done a service agent, you're doing a sales agent. Is there a difference between the two in terms of one is easier than the other, given that Salesforce is obviously a sales organisation?
That's a good question. And I think I can actually, one is easier than the other, and that would be the sales development rep, but not necessarily because of the complexity, although I think it is maybe slightly less technically complex. But I think that when we attacked the SDR as a project, Salesforce had actually pushed the product along a fair bit. When we were one of the extremely early adopters, we were on their pilot phase for the service agent. And we found that as we were building it, the tools underneath us were changing as we were developing. So there was a lot of rework because Salesforce would change something. We'd go back and we'd change it. So that settled a lot. The SDR actually is almost a subset of AgentForce product where they've got a sales development agent, and then you go and customize it from there. So it's got a lot of predefined settings that you can just toggle, enable for your data. So definitely getting it off the ground a lot easier.
So stepping back from the bleeding edge to the cutting edge just saves you a bit of skin.
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. Thanks. Good to see you, Andy.
Absolutely, likewise, mate. Hope we do it again.